So it is, which country are you most bullish on? So just looking into the future, who do you think has a very, very good, future ahead of them?
That's a good question. Um, I'll actually give you a very controversial answer. I actually am quite bullish on Saudi Arabia, because
Very controversial.
yeah, it's very controversial because the reason I'm bullish is because we can all agree the Khashoggi murder was an absolute travesty and a scar that will never heal.
Mm.
But because of it, MBS has redirected all of his energy inside Saudi Arabia. He was at one time traveling the world, investing in Uber, things like that. Now everything is being redirected internally. So all that money, all those resources are being redirected internally. And the other thing that people I think still don't quite grasp is that Saudi Arabia actually has a genuinely interesting tourism potential. So there's a lot of things that were going for Saudi Arabia that were never exploited by the royal family. Just in terms of tourism, more if you love the Middle East, Saudi Arabia has so much there that has really not been seen by many people, hasn't been experienced for decades, if not longer. We're talking about Al Ula, this ancient civilization, the same people who made the Petra. They made a lot of interesting carvings in the mountains and diverse geography. A lot of like historical buildings that weren't demolished, by new construction, palaces, um, and obviously the history of Medina and Mecca. The coastline is unexploited, and also Saudi people are just very good people. They have like a good family sense. So even as a visitor to Saudi Arabia, it'll feel different than traveling almost anywhere else in the world. And I just think that there's actually I'm more bullish about Saudi Arabia than most people are, because most people are looking at it through the lens of like human rights violations like Khashoggi, which I completely understand, but I don't think it actually has a bearing on the success of this whole country of 30 plus million people,
Mm. Great answer. Are you optimistic that Neom could actually become a functioning attraction for tourists? I have my doubts about whether it would ever be an economic attraction like MBS's dream, but could it at least work? Is this amazing like Dubai replica?
No, I'm pretty skeptical about that. But I will say this: if they decide they want to make something there, something will come. It won't be like just an idea. They will build something there, and
Hmm.
it'll probably be somewhat interesting. But it will never. I can't see it as becoming this like new Dubai. And if it is a new Dubai, it'll take 30 years for it to become a new Dubai.
Yeah.
It's not just about building a bunch of buildings, as we've seen. Like Dubai has actually been a pretty long journey, and a culture was already there around the mercantile class that helped support all that happening. So Neom is literally a blank space for the most part, except for the local sort of villages that they're just saying this is where we're going to build it, and
Mhm.
so it'll be quite an interesting experiment. But it's also a little bit distracting. There's lots of things happening in Saudi Arabia. There's lots of things happening in Riyadh alone, just the capital. In terms of redeveloping it and creating new spaces, and so it's just one of the projects.
Mm. If I could just push back and give the voice of the other side of that optimism, I mean, Saudi Arabia aren't necessarily geographically located next to giant markets that they could become some sort of manufacturing hub. I mean, that you can do anything, right? But just if you're going to look at ideally, I mean, also there's the problem of most of the labor force being from other countries, and these Saudi nationals themselves are I mean, largely very underexperienced workers because they aren't actually doing the work themselves. There is the whole issue of like female labor force participation rates, essentially probably close to zero. Then there's also the instability of their entirely leveraged economy on oil. Now, I would agree with you that it's sort of overblown that oil is going to decrease in significance to the point where Saudi Arabia wouldn't have this sort of giant wealth of money to lean back on. But I mean, that's a few things I think if you're going to
But
take
actually,
ingredients.
I think all of those things have a good answer. So actually, Saudi Arabia isn't quite like the UAE or Qatar. where everything is done by foreign labor that's imported. Of course, construction has traditionally been workers brought in from the subcontinent to do, but Saudi Arabia has so many people compared to those other countries that it has something more akin to a real economy. It has a real internal consumption economy by its locals,
Hmm.
and also you find Saudi taxi drivers, Saudi cleaners. So it's not like if you go to the
Mm.
UAE, you will not find an Emirati taxi driver.
Yeah.
So Saudi Arabia has a totally different feel in that respect.
That's interesting.
As
That's also contrary to what you hear. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
Saudi Arabia also, when it comes to women, so that's one thing MBS you can undoubtedly be assured has changed. Women employment is skyrocketing, and their rights have been greatly enhanced. It's not the same as the rest of the world, mostly by cultural limitation rather than legal. They've changed a lot of the laws,
Hmm.
and Saudi young people are among the most educated people on earth without a job, right? So they're like desperate to work.
Hmm.
Women especially, they're the most educated people in Saudi Arabia, and they're bringing them into things. So they're trying to create the jobs for those people, and so I think that it's actually an asset. The historic lack of female involvement in the labor force is actually an untapped asset. Just like people never used to visit the Nabatean ruins in Al Ula, that was an untapped asset, and the women workforce is an untapped asset too. In terms of location, I mean, they're right there, not far from the Suez Canal and the Red
Hmm.
Sea. If relationships improve with Israel, for example, there's obviously the Gulf of Aqaba is an interesting space for that kind of thing. Um, so I think there's more going for it. It's more central, and also they have things like they have something that no one can take away. They have Mecca and Medina, of which they are custodians of. People every year will always be traveling to Saudi Arabia.
Hmm.
One of the ideas they have is how do we get those people who are visiting for their spiritual journey to stick around, and then after they go there, they come into Riyadh and they come to other places in the country.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, look, there's no doubt the challenges are complex. Just even climate wise are very challenging, and the addiction to oil is understandable. It was such a reliable source of revenue,
Hmm.
but at least it gives them some money to use to spend on something else, to develop something else.
That was a fascinating answer. Thank you for offering the controversial country. I think it's brilliant, and it actually makes me really want to go to Saudi Arabia. I've always had a quite a negative idea of Saudi Arabia, and that's just because of I guess my own prejudices, right? But I've never thought of it as a great tourist destination. But it sounds like there are places outside of Riyadh that are much more worth seeing than Riyadh itself, right? And air
But no,
conditioned malls and stuff like that.
Riyadh itself has better tourism stuff than anywhere else in the entire Arabian Gulf. Just Riyadh, the city of Riyadh alone.
Really
Yeah.
amazing.